Hello and welcome to National Park Wild. I'm Eric. I have some large projects in the works, so here is a little bit of a break between them, a mini review of Gateway Arch National Park. Now this one I think many consider to be the worst national park. It's not very nature focused, and people wonder why it gained park status. Personally, I believe it's an example of national parks being tourism based more than just protecting good stuff, and that is why it gained the park status. It made it more of a tourist destination than it used to be when it was known as Jefferson Expansion National Memorial before 2018. But here are my thoughts on the park overall. The arch itself is an interesting sight. I think it looks pretty fascinating, and there are a few different angles you can get, so I like getting different photos and videos of that. However, as far as national park sites go, it's far from my favorite. I love architecture, but I'm just not really looking for that in a national park. If you're really into history and architecture more than nature, this could be your favorite national park possibly, but I still don't quite see the appeal compared to something like Grand Canyon or Yellowstone or that kind of thing. That said, there is one thing here that does feel like a national park, and that is the Gateway Arch Museum. It is more modern than most national park visitor centers museums, but it is large and has a lot of great exhibits. You learn about American history from many decades ago over a long period of time. You get to see different sides of American history, from the Native Americans to non-Native Americans. You get to learn about how African Americans were integrated into society, and there's a lot to learn from it. Some of the artifacts are fascinating, and honestly I spent way more time in the museum than I did with the actual arch. There is one other feature I'm sure some are familiar with, and that is the ride up to the top of the arch. You get in these tiny capsules, and when I say tiny, I do mean tiny. It can be quite claustrophobic, so if you are easily scared of tight spaces, do not do this. Personally, even when I'm not that scared of tight spaces, I don't think it's worth it. The view isn't that excellent, and while this is quite an engineering marvel, I feel like as far as national park attractions go, it's just not one that really feels like it belongs with the others. If every single national park were some sort of large building, like every national park was Washington Monument or Space Needle or Willis Tower, I still think this would be one of the weaker ones. Compared to things like in the National Mall, it doesn't have quite the level of budget, honestly. And I'm also just not sure it has the same level of impact as something like the Washington Monuments. Can't quite explain that. But really, outside of being along the river, a few squirrels, the arch itself, and a museum, there's nothing else to talk about. Most other national parks are large. The smallest national park outside of Gateway Arch is like 5,500 acres, that being Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas. This one is like 120 or so it is kind of a sore thumb compared to the rest. Every other national park really focuses on some sort of nature thing, and those national parks also don't landscape, because Gateway Arch's park grounds, for the most part, are not entirely natural, and that's also kind of weird. So while it is a nice place to spend a few hours, maybe like 2 or 3, personally, I think it's best if you go in pretending it's not a national park. Worth a visit if you're in the area, if you can find parking as well. One key with that, parking can be kind of hard to find, but the nicest area I found was just a bit northeast of the main arch area, and it was affordable and not too bad. But that's pretty much all the thoughts on Gateway Arch. Go if you want to, but it's definitely not a top priority for a national park fan. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe for more content. I have quite a few big videos on the way. I'll see you next time.